Just following on from the previous video there where we're talking about the solutions to global warming and the bushfire crisis in Australia, many people have commented from around the world that how does the Australian government allow this to have happened when they've known in advance for several years, people have been warning them, oh, it's going to be a terrible bushfire crisis, and yet they're still not taking action to prevent global warming. Many people think, wow, that's so strange when Australia is such a great democracy and, you know, a leader in the world in ideas and different things, that the government could be so behind the times or beholden to the coal industry or beholden to the cattle farming industry. And they think, wow, the Australians must be really, you know, stupid or like, I don't know, just behind the times in electing such a government. But actually, it's not always as simple as that. People think Australia is a great democracy, and it was some of the leaders in the early 1900s in certain things like keeping the people's vote secret, which stopped pressure from certain political groups or business groups to make people vote a certain way. So the secret ballot's a thing that Australia is very famous for and people are very proud of here. But the real problem in Australia here is that there's no voter security. So in Australia, you can, when there's an election for state or federal government or even council, all you do is go to an election booth and state your name and address, and then they just tick you off, not on a computer, but on a book, on a little book that everybody has. You don't have to present any identification whatsoever. So, and the voting people don't know who you are. So feasibly, you could pick one of your neighbor's names and go to the voting booth and vote for him, and then go to the next voting booth, vote under his name or her name, and then go to the next voting booth and do the same thing again. So that way a person could vote 100 times, 1,000 times, especially when they can vote out of the electorate. So they just go to an electoral booth to vote, and they say, oh, I'm John Smith from Newcastle, from 36 Johnson Street, Newcastle, and I want to vote. And they just, oh yeah, yep. As long as your name is on the electoral roll, that's fine. But it doesn't even matter if it's you or not. And you can vote multiple times. You're not supposed to, of course, but they can't check up on it because once you voted, your vote is placed in a box and it's not identified. So even if you voted 1,000 times, they couldn't actually then go back and say, oh, whose votes we'll pull these 1,000 votes out because this person cheated. So it's as simple as that. I can see that when I go and vote. Anybody can see that. So basically, most elections in Australia are decided by a margin of 1 or 2% of the vote in particularly key electorates. So all they do is focus on those key electorates, and all they have to do then is gain 1 or 2% vote, extra votes, and then they win. That's not the only way that things are corrupt in Australia. Here we have, for years and years and years, we've had control of the media by 3 different groups, Murdoch, Packer, and one other group, and they're corrupt. They basically say what they want to say, and they're involved with big business, they're involved with the military-industrial complex, they're involved with cattle farming and with coal mining, and they promote those industries. So if somebody comes in saying that, oh, the electoral system's not right, you should write about it, they won't. Or they'll twist it. I've personally been involved in politics in Australia, and I've seen things where people created fake political parties and channeled votes, and I informed all the media about it, and they wouldn't report on it. In fact, the New South Wales government used it as an excuse to get rid of more political parties and make it more difficult. So they strangle democracy more because instead of reporting on the fraudulent activities of certain individuals. So this is why Australia is not really a real democracy. It's a fake democracy. There's no voter security. One person could have 1,000 votes, and other people are just voting once. So they're relying on the honesty of people who are dishonest. You can see that all these people involved in the coal mining industries, the cattle farming industries, the big pharmaceutical companies that want to force their medicine onto everybody, they're corrupt. And they don't care about lying. They don't care about cheating, just like the American government didn't care about lying about going to war with Iraq. Oh, we'll just create a story about weapons of mass destruction. These industries and the governments that they control always are creating little fake stories in order to justify what they do, and then they spread it through the news and the media. But the real problem in Australia here is that we don't have a real democracy. We don't have it where people actually, intelligent voices are coming forward with solutions to the problems. And taxpayers' monies are being spent on things that are going to help benefit our planet and our people for the next 1,000 years. Here they have a very short-minded attitude. They're not even looking 5 years in advance and going, what's the climate going to be like? What's this place going to be like for our children, our grandchildren? They don't care. They're selfish. And that's what makes this terrible. And they're dishonest. And unfortunately, too many people are naive and are just sitting there and going, oh, that's fine. Oh, I think I'm in Australia. It's a great country. We're the lucky country. Actually, it's being destroyed. It was a great country. There's lots of forests, lots of minerals, lots of everything. But people aren't looking after it properly. And they're destroying it for the future. Not only that, we have a responsibility. We have one continent out of 6. It's not just one country out of 200. It's a continent. And it's being destroyed by cattle farmers, by miners. And it shouldn't be. We should be looking after this place, planting more trees, creating environment, looking after the native animals, and looking after our people and their health. It's ridiculous. One thing else I wanted to mention here is that in Australia, guess who makes the electoral laws? Guess who can change them? It's the parliamentarians who are voted in by them. So if they're getting voted in through fraudulent means, would they really want to change them? Or do they want to keep it where they can keep the same system? That's the problem. So what's the solution? Well, Australians don't want to have a revolution like the Americans did, but maybe they will. But what's the alternative? How do we get politicians who are unjustly elected to listen to somebody saying we want a fair democracy? Good question. I look forward to your comments.